Hey guys, welcome to week 1 of High Stakes. This is our new sermon series and small group series on the book of Jude. Now, I don't know if you're like me. I grew up in a church. I've been in church all my life. I have never once in my entire life heard a sermon, let alone a series on the book of Jude. And when David first said we were going to do this, I thought, man, there's no way you can get 4 weeks out of that. Jude's the shortest book. Well, it's not. It's almost the shortest book. One of the shortest books in the entire Bible. And I thought, there's no way we can get a whole series out of that. But the more we dug into it, the richer it was. And it's just been good, even in our own study. I think it's going to be good in your study as well. So we're going to have a good time together. The thing is, though, we're kind of going to go through the book of Jude topically. And so even though there's a lot in there, we're just looking at little pieces of it. For the next 4 weeks, we're just going to look at a little piece each week. And so instead of trying to do an in-depth study and break out our lexicons and just take that little piece to bits, what we're actually going to do is we're going to look at some things that relate to it. All right, so hear me out. Here's what I mean. Each week, we're going to look at a parable of Jesus that describes the traits or the features, the attributes of what is being discussed in that part of Jude that week. So we are all about following Jesus, and so it pays to pay attention to his words. And so even as we're in the book of Jude, which I love, we're also going to be pairing that with some part of a reading from the Gospels. And then we're going to be doing what we call Discovery Bible Study as a way to dig into that. And if you were with us for our previous series on Daniel, it's the same thing we did there. So the experience will be similar, but I think we're going to have a good time. Okay? So without further ado, let's break into the book of Jude. So in my Bible, in every Bible, Jude is almost at the very back. It's the last book of the Bible before Revelation. It's very, very small, very short, and it's only got one chapter. So in a lot of times we talk about, in a lot of books, we talk about chapters and verses, but in Jude, we just talk about verses because there are no chapters, it's just one chapter. And this week, to start things off, we talked about following a high-stakes God, and that we kind of just looked at the introduction to the book of Jude. Jude is the brother of Jesus. He refers to himself as the servant or the slave of Jesus, and the brother of John. The brother of James. So he'd be half brother of Jesus, but he doesn't want to make a big deal out of his ancestry. He just wants the people to know who it is that's talking. All right, and so Jude is the author, and the way he starts out his letter is beautiful. Right, this is what he says. He says, Jude, a servant of Jesus Christ, a servant or slave of Jesus Christ, and brother to James, to those who have been called, who are loved by God the Father, and who are kept by Christ Jesus. Now, the translation here, depending on what translation you have, you might have something slightly different for this because it is actually very fascinating. All the prepositions here are a little bit, they could go either way. So called by, or kept by Jesus, kept for Jesus, kept in Jesus. Jesus is doing the keeping, he's doing the keeping for himself, right? So what does he say? He says, to those who have been called, who are loved by God the Father and kept by Jesus Christ, mercy, peace, and love be yours in abundance. Now, when I think about being kept, when I think about being loved, when I think about being pursued, what I think about, called, loved, kept, what I think about is some parables that Jesus told to explain what it's like to be called and loved and kept by the Father. And they're found in Luke 15. And there's 3 parables here. We're going to read through all of them. I think the last of the 3 is the most famous, but we tend to read them individually. This is a parable, and this is a parable, and this is a parable. But actually, it's the same story 3 different ways. And it's the parable of the lost sheep, the parable of the lost coin, and the parable of the lost son, right? You may have heard the prodigal son. But each one of these really is its own story that's worth telling. And I would love for us to kind of get into there's a story behind the story here, right? There's the story that we're reading, but each one of these stack up, right? They stack up to a larger story that we get to be a part of and that we get to see and understand some things about God by looking at the stories in comparison to each other. So that's what we're going to do in our time here. So we're going to go through Luke 15, pretty much the whole chapter, which is it's long. And what we're going to do is we're going to use our Discovery Bible Study approach, our method, as a way of looking at the text. The lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son. And then when we finish, we're going to come back to Jude at the very end, and we're going to read that introduction one more time to those who have been called, who have been loved, who have been kept in and for and with Christ Jesus. So we're going to see if the reading that we do in Jesus' Gospels and the stories of Jesus that he tells, Jesus' parables, we're going to see if that reading informs the way that we understand what is being said in the book of Jude. Okay? So go ahead and do that. We'll get started. Just follow along with the prompts that are in your book and have a fantastic conversation. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next week.